Did you know Mike Judge made a live-action King of the Hill movie after he made Idiocracy? You're never going to be able to unsee this once I point it out, but what's your favorite Jason Bateman comedy? It's day 74 of 365, today's movie, Extract. This one's directed by Mike Judge and stars Jason Bateman, Kristen Wiig, Mila Kunis, and JK Simmons, among a bunch of other fantastic actors. And even though this movie came out after Idiocracy, it was actually written before it, right after Mike Judge did Office Space. At the time this one was released to very little fanfare. I actually remember going to see this because Mila Kunis was in it, and I was into Family Guy at the time. I was not so much a King of the Hill fan when I was young, and I got into it later when I was older. When I saw this as a teen, I actually remember thinking it reminded me of Kevin Smith movies because I was way more into him at the time. Although I felt it didn't have quite the bite of a Kevin Smith movie, this is a lot more slice of life, very cottagecore as far as comedies go. I also hadn't seen this one since 2009, so rewatching it in 2025 after having become a King of the Hill fan and with the revival going on right now, I was actually kind of blown away at how similar this premise and the characters are to King of the Hill. But if you don't believe me, instead of talking about my three favorite things, let me point out the three reasons I think that Extract is just a live-action King of the Hill movie. My first bit of evidence is the everyman running a small business. Hank Hill sells propane and propane accessories, and this is deeply important to who he is as a person. And as Joel comes to discover in Extract, making Extract is deeply important to who he is as a person. He even has an anecdote in the movie where he talks about the importance of how this idea came to him, and selling this business is kind of the crux of the whole movie. Will he, won't he? Is it that important to him, or is the sellout and the glow up that can come with it more important? This is something I'd love to see Hank Hill put into that position for. And the everyman working through this kind of problem makes for a pretty decent indie dramedy, if you ask me. The second thing is the awkward small town morality crisis. Hank Hill goes through a morality crisis in every single episode presented by one of the weirdos in his town or within his friend group or within his family. And Joel is presented with the exact same thing through Ben Affleck's character playing the bartender in town. This morality crisis ends up being the crux of the movie. Also, something worth pointing out is this is the second time Mike Judge has done a cuck movie, I guess, and I find that to be a really interesting thing. If I had a nickel for every time he did it, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that he's done it twice. I won't go as far as accusing him of the Dan Harmon incest obsession, but let's just say this is duly noted, Mr. Judge. Is this something you need to talk about? I also do think that this cuckolding premise is the correct dial-up for a dramedy of this nature. This was not an expensive movie by any stretch of the imagination. This is a lot of very funny people getting together to make really easy to make filmmaking. There's nothing way over the top. I think the most involved sequence is the sequence where Joel gets high in the apartment, and even that is just kind of shot a little funny. All of this is meant to give you that kind of low, slow, easy, small town vibe, and I really dig that. So we'll call this something that I liked and a piece of evidence for this being a King of the Hill live action. My third and final bit of evidence is the quirky side characters. We all know Hank's friends, Bill, Dale, and Boomhauer. They round out that show and give us quite the cast of colorful characters. We get almost one-to-ones for them in this movie as well. Joel's neighbor Nathan is basically Dale. He's awkward, he's annoying, he crosses social boundaries, so we can just put him directly into that position. Boomhauer is this smooth, always have a story friend. That's Ben Affleck's character in this movie. We're rounding out most of Arlen, Texas just through the side characters. Even Step ends up being very, very similar to a Bill character, just a sweet Southern guy who wants to do what's right and see things a little on the outside. You could even slot in JK Simmons' Dean character with basically any of the friends. He's there with a solution, nice and quick whenever Joel needs one. You can really round this out, and while we never get the 4 characters standing at the front of their street drinking beers together, I bet they almost thought about doing that. I could almost guarantee they thought about doing that. But what do you think? Am I going out on a limb here saying that this is basically a King of the Hill movie? Or would you like to see an actual King of the Hill movie? I feel like because Extract kind of works, I could see that movie working. I think the tone and pulling off the sequences would be the hardest part, but I'm curious what you think. We're gonna switch it up from indie dramedy to Bruce Willis sci-fi sleeper dud, I guess, with Surrogates. We talked about this movie on Film Rescue. I didn't like it very much, but let's see what my review is when I see you tomorrow.